Good evening, welcome.
Good evening.
Oh, wow, fantastic, thank you. So I'm Elizabeth Wood, Assistant Superintendent. Really pleased to welcome you here this evening to a presentation on our academic course progressions. We have several administrators here with us this evening, and they will introduce themselves as they come forward and speak about their piece of the presentation. I'll just walk you through and kind of give you an overview of what you can expect for the next hour. We are going to spend time talking about choosing the right path for your child. Shenandoah is large enough, we are fortunate that we can offer several paths to learning. And you will be involved with your child at various points in choosing which courses he or she will be taking. There's a great thing that comes with choice, and there's a very heavy responsibility that comes with choice, hence why we provide opportunities like this evening to talk about how to make some of these choices together. We will spend a little bit of time reviewing the academic progressions documents and helping you know where to find them, because hopefully you will find them to be a great reference point as you have conversations with your child. And at the very end, we're going to have a question and answer session where we will address what we're able to. If it's something personal, we'll ask that you come up and speak with us later. But for the most part, if you have general questions about program pathways or something, if you have the question, others may have the question as well, and we're happy to address it from a Q&A standpoint. If you would like to follow along with this presentation, and if you have a smartphone with you, I would encourage you to do this for the simple reason that if your eyes have gotten a little bit like mine, unless you're in the front row, especially as we progress through the slides and we get to the actual progressions documents themselves, you're going to find the print is, we already know it's small up here, but if you could have it on your device in front of you, that would be great. We've actually loaded this entire presentation on the Shenandoah webpage. It's under the academics webpage. And if you see, I think many of you, if one of you has the piece of paper that you got, if you just hold it up, the top thing that you have on it, there you go. The top line on that gives you the address if you want to type in your phone directly in to get to that presentation. Or if you're already in the Shen website, you can go to www.shenet.org/academics, and then you scroll down, and right in one of the sections where the progressions documents are listed, you'll find a link to tonight's presentation. It's probably faster to go to the direct address. If you, yes?
What is the, can we join this Wi-Fi?
Not easily. You're probably, there is a public access to it. It's just, by the time you access it, for the period of time, you may find it better to run on your data plan, truthfully.
The data plan doesn't work inside.
Oh, it doesn't work either. All right, sir, yes. Mrs. DeFishani, do you remember the Wi-Fi access code?
Just for the public.
For the public, that's right, for the public domain, you should be able to access the website. That's good, thank you. This is why I have smart people here with me. That's right. So if you have questions as we go along tonight, you have a few different options of how to submit them. One, we do have good old-fashioned index cards up here, and if you'd like them, we are certainly happy to pass those out. We also have a QR code, which is in your listing. If you have a scanner on your phone, you'll find that's probably the easiest way to get to it, that you can just scan with it. If you don't have a scanner, if you have a smartphone and you have room, you may find it useful as the years go on, more and more you see scanning codes like this, and they're just very handy because it'll take you exactly to the place that you want to be able to enter your information. So on the back end, we're able to monitor the questions that come in that you enter there. So you can enter it with typing in the URL, you can enter it by scanning it and taking you right there, or the good old-fashioned note card way. Okay, so I'm hoping that this page looks familiar to some of you, and if it doesn't yet, hope it will now and going forward. This is the academic page on the district website. It is where you will find the links to all of our progressions documents. And when I say progressions documents, what I'm referring to is all the course choices that students have access to from, well, kindergarten through grade 12. The ones, honestly, that are used the most are the 6 through 12, where there are many more selection options, and you're able to trace if my child takes this course as a 6th grader or 7th grader, what are they likely flowing into at that next level. Those are always posted there year-round, and we do update them as we add or change courses. The progressions are laid out, and for each subject area, into 3 levels. We have the Regents level, the Honors level, and the Accelerated level. It's important to note that there are multiple formulas for success in Shenendehowa. It is not just that our students who take all accelerated classes are our successful students. I want to be really clear that our Regents level courses are top quality courses that are leading toward the Advanced Regents diploma. So we highly recommend that Regents level pathway, and then we'll talk a little bit about making some choices where some students may want to sample at other places. There are multiple entry points. I really want to make this an important point. The progressions, as you look across them horizontally, may look as though they are a very steady line. That once you're in one track, you can never move. That's not really the case. There are different points in time where you can move in and out of different levels, like say from a Regents level to an Honors level. And there are different points in time where you can move from an Honors level to an Accelerated, although those areas of entry are more defined. More information about where you can access the Accelerated level courses can be found also on that home page of the academics on the website. Over on the right-hand side of that home page, there's an Acceleration and Enrichment tab, which will take you to many more resources. And this is a lot of information all at once, but the best thing is for you to know that it exists and that it can be at your fingertips anytime, day or night. It's there for you to review. So here is an example of what one of our progressions documents looks like. You'll see that this is the high school social studies one. And at the top, we have the Regents level progression, and then right beneath it is the Honors level progression, and then right beneath it is the Accelerated. You'll notice this is the furthest left column is the grade 6. You'll see that for social studies, we only offer one offering. All students will take grade 6 social studies at a Regents level. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, it is really important to make good decisions with your child about which courses you want him or her to take. The Regents path is a really solid pathway. It is amazing how often we hear a lot of pressure for students to take upper level classes. We would like a lot of our students, in fact, but I'm going to stop talking about middle school for a minute and think about high school. A large percent of our students in the high school take one or more courses that are at the Honors or Accelerated level. A lot of our students do. The most important point I can make about that is very, very few students take all of them. It is really for the most exceptional students who we can't meet their needs in any other way. You have to be so exceptionally careful in counseling your children, and we count on you in some cases to talk sense into your children, because we have students who desperately want to take every single top level course. It is too much, really. There is, let me say this is a really important point. There is no one formula to get into a top level school. We have students at Shenendehowa who are incredibly gifted and do brilliantly, beyond what we could have ever imagined doing in high school ourselves. who have outside activities and play an instrument and are on a varsity sports team or many and have lots of volunteer hours, and those students still cannot get into every single Ivy League of their choice. There is no one formula to get exactly to a certain destination. So we want to encourage you to be really selective about what you do, because at the end of the day, childhood is a journey. Your time with your children is really important, and we want that to be quality time. If you are constantly, I just want to dispel any notion that you can have a predetermined, my child will only go to MIT. Maybe that will happen, maybe that won't. But there are so many great options for students that don't involve a single pathway to a single university. There are great colleges and universities to choose from, and very often having a really well-balanced high school program where you're choosing some honors level or some AP classes, and the others are more traditional Regents level classes, and having a healthy activities outside of school. There are so many things a child can do with that. They can get into great colleges and universities, and the reality is the students who have the longest game plan, they need more than just 4 years of school. So where many of our students are going to go will basically be a program to go on to a master's or eventually even a doctoral level program. So just to keep in mind, it's about the long game with children. We see, and our counselors will be the first ones to tell you, too many students that are feeling tremendous pressure right now. And I don't want your message to be you go home and say you're not signing up for any of them, because we do want our students to challenge themselves, and it's best if they can do it on our dime, right? A few AP courses in high school to get them really college ready, where you're not paying the bill, and they can stumble a little bit and have a few grades that they say, oh, I'm going to have to really learn how to learn for the first time. I'm going to really have to press myself. That's fantastic. That's what we want. It's just about picking and choosing carefully so that the 18 years that they're under your roof is a positive experience, and you have other opportunities to guide and shape them beyond just, is your homework done? Are you ready for that test? Are you okay? Do we need to get a tutor for something? Okay. So the goal is to really make sure you're seeking the right balance as a family, and that is what we're hoping to do this evening, is really walk you through the choices, and then for you to be thinking from a strengths-based perspective, where do I see my child leaning toward? Do I see my child with strengths in the humanities? Do I see my child having a strong interest in the sciences? And that will help you guide your child into which courses he or she may be saying yes to. All right, so starting in elementary school with our elementary progression, we have Mrs. Kathleen Strangis, who will give an overview of our elementary ELA program. Then we'll move to our high school, our middle school, high school ELA program, and we'll move kind of down the line kind of quickly. But our academic administrators for these various subject areas will give you the highlights that you want to see, and mostly make you aware of some of the key transition points.
Thank you, Dr. Wood. My name is Kathleen Strangis. As Dr. Wood said, I supervise K-5 elementary ELA, English Language Arts, and Social Studies. And what we'd like to say is, as Dr. Wood described, education is a journey. My part here may seem very small. I know we're here to talk about accelerated pathways, but I also want to provide sort of a peace of mind in saying that we build a strong foundation in our elementary school. We have a very literacy-rich program, and so just think about building blocks, right? You need to have that very strong, broad-based foundation. And in that way, we have a balanced literacy program in our classrooms, so there's varied opportunity where students participate in whole group lessons, where teachers are still reading aloud, where they're involved in individual novels of all different genres in that way. The last 2 years specifically, we've spent a great deal of time with our teachers also on writing and best practices in writing, because we know too that writing is so important as a life skill. So at the elementary level, yes, strong curriculum, rigorous in its availability, differentiation based on students' needs. We're constantly looking at that, and our classrooms are often optimizing groups, small groups, larger groups, cooperative groups in that way, as they share reading in that way. I think the most important thing I want to say, and as I said, this part is brief, but please don't minimize how large our program is that we really try to work to instill a love of learning, a love of literature, a love of informational text. We try to inspire that inquisitive mind. We've been working with our teachers a lot more about this concept of close reading you may have heard about through the years as our standards have changed, and the idea that it's not just about reading for enjoyment is super important, motivation to do so is super important, but the other piece is an analysis of that text. Can I talk to you about what's in there? Can I talk to you about the inferences and the summation? And can I take those skills, continue to build, so that when I get to the middle high or I get to a pathway, an alternative pathway that's offered to me, I'm ready, I'm prepared. So just in closing, I'd like to say that with the social studies piece, we also, it's sort of cross-content, if you will, and when I say that, what I mean is that so much of our reading has a social studies or a science base to it, so it's interdisciplinary. So when the students are writing, they are also engaged in social studies conversations, practices, contextualization, geography, history. Those are sort of naturally occurring texts within their Journeys textbook or their novels or their social studies practices. So it seems like a very thematic way to approach things, but it's also very deliberate in that it's skills, and we continue to develop those. So I'll introduce Kathy Sherwin to you. She'll take over for the 612 part of ELA.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As Kathleen Strangis just said, I'm Kathy Sherwin, and I'm the Academic Administrator for English in grades 6 through 12. And our middle school, high school English program really does offer a diverse array of courses to meet the needs of every learner. Most students enter the 612 English program by taking either Reading 6 and English 6, or a very small enriched course called Critical Inquiry, which is really for our most highly capable group of readers. Regardless of what course a student enters the English program taking, every student has the equal opportunity to be considered for honors programming in grade 7. We begin honors programming in English in grade 7, though the vast majority of our students continues to take Regents level programming throughout middle school. Also in grade 7, we begin acceleration. Acceleration in English is done jointly with social studies, and that means that if a student is going to accelerate in English, he or she also needs to accelerate in social studies. They go together. After our very strong skills-based middle school program, the array of courses really expands substantially when students go to high school. We have very rich Regents level programming throughout grades 9 through 12. We also have some very strong honors courses, particularly English 10 honors, which offers students the opportunity for the first time to really use literary criticism to analyze literature. We also have an honors course in grade 11 called Literary Classics and Decisions that offers students the opportunity to analyze literature through the lens of philosophy. And for the first time in high school, students have the opportunity to take their first interdisciplinary course. It's a course called World Culture, World Literature, and it is an iconic course here at Shenendehowa. I bet some of you here in the audience have even taken that course. Show of hands if you are a World Cult, World Lit alum. Okay, we have a couple in the audience. Yeah, that's a really wonderful course that is an intersection of literature, history, and art. It's a humanities course. In addition to those courses, we also offer 2 advanced placement courses in English. We offer AP Language and Composition in grade 11 and AP Literature and Composition in grade 12. Students do take the English Regents exam at the end of 11th grade, and then after they have successfully passed that test, we have a number of courses at grade 12 from which students can choose. Some are semester courses, some are full year courses, Again, many are Regents level, some are honors level. We have our, as I said, AP Lit also at 12th grade. And we also have our newest course, which is English 12. Thank you. But let me introduce our next academic administrator, which is Michelle Gabri-Cuba, and she's going to talk about elementary math and science.
Yes,
Can you hold your question until we get to that part of the program? Thank you. Would you like an index card or, oh, you're good, okay, thank you.
Good evening, I'm Michelle Gabri-Cuba, Academic Administrator for Math and Science, kindergarten through 5th grade. I'm going to echo a lot of what Kathleen Strange said when she talked about our elementary ELA programming. Our math program and curriculum is also very broad-based to build that strong foundation for our students in mathematics. As you can see from our course progression documents, our curriculum definitely emphasizes that conceptual understanding of mathematics. We want students to really understand why an algorithm works, not just necessarily how to do an algorithm. So you'll see that in the course progression document. In addition, we want to build a procedural knowledge. That's our fluency piece. And we're also looking for them to be able to apply their mathematical learning. So we do a lot of problem solving. We use Go Math as our program here at Shannon, as our core math program. And it's really designed to be challenging to students, but also very engaging to students. And it really works to meet the needs of all our learners. There are lots of pieces built in for that differentiation. Data has shown that we really have improved student performance through this program, so we're very confident in using that as our instructional resource. We incorporate a lot of technological pieces right from the Go Math curriculum as well as some other sources. And a lot of those also work to help meet the students where they're at and help progress them along with their mathematical skills. So the goal of our program really is to engage students in active learning. We really want to help them to develop their mathematical understandings, but also, as Kathleen pointed out, we want them to enjoy math. We want them to think math is fun. That's really important to get them while they're young so they can carry that joy and excitement throughout their school experience. We have a couple of opportunities for kids to accelerate in math starting at the intermediate level, so starting at grade 3. There are two options. One is our Quest program. That's an opportunity for them to for our top students to really get challenged with the curriculum. And then we also have an opportunity for them to accelerate in math. There are a number of data points that we look at in order to consider them for that programming. Those being our COGAT testing, we have TOMAGS testing, we also look at gifted rating scales, we look at how they're doing on local assessments. So there's a lot of pieces to that. And again, that starts at the intermediate level. And I think now I'm going to turn it over to Carrie Peverly, who is our 6 through 12 math administrator.
Good evening. Again, Carrie Peverly, Academic Administrator for math grades 6 through 12. What you will see on our progressions document is there are many pathways for students starting in grade 6. And so I'm going to try to just give you the highlights of what you're looking at here. And again, I would encourage you to get it in more depth when you have the time to do so. Basically, at the middle school level, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, we have Regents pathways, we have honors, and we also have accelerated opportunities. And as Michelle just said, if a student does not accelerate at the elementary level, where there are some opportunities for that, our students would start accelerating at the middle school level, 6th grade going into 7th grade. And that's a question that comes up often. So students may not accelerate if they haven't already been previously accelerated coming into 6th grade, because that subject is so foundational for students to have that skipping over that would really create gaps that we don't want students to have. So again, if your child is not accelerated and it's something that is determined that is needed later on in the middle school, that would be considered in 6th grade going into 7th grade. We also have students 7th grade into 8th grade, again, recognizing as students mature at different places and become perhaps more interested in different places throughout their academic career as well. At the high school level, you'll see a lot more arrows in different places. But again, basically there's a Regents pathway, an honors pathway, and an accelerated pathway. What's great about the high school is that, again, things get more difficult as time goes on. These are now Regents exams at the end of algebra, geometry, and algebra 2. And so we have different and more support for students in some cases to be able to pass those courses and pass those Regents exams, which are needed for either a Regents or an Advanced Regents diploma. So we have things such as, again, Regents courses where a student takes a course in 1 year. We have some other courses that are extended courses, such as algebra. So for some of our students, they take algebra over 2 years. And for other students, we recognize that it's really just a matter of more time. So for some students, they'll take a course in 1 year, but then they have a lab that goes with that course. So in those cases, they would have a math class every day and an additional math class every other day with the same teacher. So in that way, again, more time, but still being able to get through that course within 1 year. As far as the question often comes up, how do I get my student into an honors or an accelerated pathway? It really, again, comes back to, does the child need something different to be challenged? Because again, as Dr. Wood said, our math courses are very challenging to start with. We are looking for all students to have a deep understanding of math. We want all students to see the applications of math in their everyday lives. So it's already rigorous, but again, we recognize that some students need something different. And so in those cases, we're looking at how students do on assessments, common assessments, how they're doing in terms of work ethic. Are they interested in math? Sometimes we forget to just ask that question. Is it something they want to pursue in more depth? So if we're looking at all of those pieces when a teacher makes a recommendation for either honors or accelerated programming. And those are important to take a look at. Again, as Dr. Wood mentioned, there is a document that is at the bottom of each of these, and it's called the Profiles of a Regents, Honors, and Accelerated Student. And if you're thinking that your child might need something different, I would strongly encourage you to take a look at that document and see if what we have outlined as a profile kind of fits what you're thinking about your own child. Teachers take a lot of time in terms of recommending students for the next course. And what I'm going to leave you with is the idea that if you have questions, if you're not quite sure what the right pathway is, or if you disagree with what the teacher is thinking, have a conversation with the teacher. Talk to the teacher about your goals, your child's goals, and talk about the types of things that would create the best placement for your child so that they have the best experience. Because it's not just the outcome. It really is, as some of my colleagues have already said, it's the experience along the way. We want kids to be confident, we want them to love math, we want them to leave again with a deep understanding, and again, there's lots of different ways to get there. One last thing I want to address because I know it comes up. How does my child get into calculus? Okay, so I'm just going to answer that now. Students who do not accelerate generally do not take calculus. So students who accelerate have the opportunity to take calculus either as an 11th or 12th grader. However, there are AP opportunities. So if a child is not accelerated, they still have the opportunity to take AP statistics, which is also a very rigorous college-oriented kind of course. So again, just wanted to address that because I know it comes up often. But again, any questions, please let me know. Okay, thank you. And now I'm going to hand it over to Mrs. Lorch, our Academic Administrator for Science.
Okay, good evening. I promise I'll make it short. The bottom line with science, and I'm an Academic Administrator for Science in grades 6 through 12. The bottom line with science is it's basically a subject that requires the application of what students are learning in ELA and math. So, science is a little bit of a different beast. It's application primarily. If you look at the progressions, I would point out a couple of key pieces of information. One is we do not accelerate in science until grade 8. Okay, so that is really the opening, that's the gateway to get into acceleration in science, but that does not mean that your child cannot catch up to the kids who have accelerated. There are other ways they can do that throughout the program. So if your child is going into 8th grade and they do not get recommended to accelerate in science, There are other ways that they can catch up. Some kids do double up in the senior year. In fact, I would say about 60% of our kids who are currently in AP Bio are also concurrently enrolled in physics. So that's a key piece of information. The other piece of information regarding acceleration is we do not accelerate in science without acceleration in math. And the reason for that can be very confusing. I often get the question from parents, you know, my child can do an excellent job in earth science. Yes, that's true. The first course that they would take in the sequence, whether they're starting in 8th grade or 9th grade, is earth science. Most students can do pretty well in earth science even if they are not accelerated in math. The same is true for biology, which is the next course. What happens though is that when those students hit chemistry without being accelerated, that's when they really hit the wall. Because chemistry is a very different beast. It's very analytical, it's very applied mathematics. So the match between acceleration in math and science really comes down to worrying about putting the kid in chemistry in grade 10 when they don't have the ability to be successful there. And we've done many, many years of longitudinal studies and determined the same exact conclusion every single time, which is they have to be accelerated in math in order to be accelerated in science because we want them to be successful in chemistry as 10th graders. So that's one piece that's important to note about the progressions. The other thing in science that I think is really important to note is that the science disciplines are extremely different from each other. So if a student is doing extremely well in earth science, it doesn't mean they're going to do well in biology. If they're doing extremely well in biology, it doesn't mean they're going to do well in chemistry. So I often have parents call me, usually it's chemistry, they'll call me and they're very upset because the child had 99s in biology in grade 10 or grade 9 and now the child is really struggling in chemistry. So just keep in mind they're very, very, very different subjects, even though the recommendation is for the next piece based on how they're doing in the science that they're in. Another piece that is important to note is a few years ago, and I think it's kind of been mentioned a few times here too, and I think this is really important for you to hear. We had a number of different admissions counselors come in to talk to us at the high school, and without exception, from the Ivies all the way to Hudson Valley, we heard, do not let children opt out of science and math in the senior year. So even though the requirement from New York State is for only 3 years of science, they don't want your child to opt out of physics. So while you may call an admissions counselor for a college that your child might be interested in and ask the question, of course they're going to say, oh, you don't have to take physics to come here. But what they don't tell you is that they put it in a different pile. So here are all the applications of students that have some experience with earth science, biology, chemistry, and physics, pile A, and the child who opted out of science or math in the senior year is pile B. So I can strongly recommend that you encourage your child to take all 4 sciences, earth science, biology, chemistry, and physics. It's in our program of studies, it's italicized, it's bolded, and for that very reason. We do not really allow students to opt out of science in the senior year. We do not allow them to opt out of physics to take an elective. We do have some pretty cool electives at the senior year. They can take it even if they don't accelerate. They may have to double up at some point along the way, and many, many of our students do that. So kind of the overarching message that everyone else has given you is that there are many, many pathways. Your child can choose to do an AP, an honors level course when they are ready for it. The door is never closed, and it happens. So even though the arrows on the progressions look like it's a pretty straight path, we very often have students who go up, go down, you know, whatever is going on in the child's life. It's a very fluid process. And again, just make sure you talk to your child's teacher if you have questions about placements and where they should go in the following years. With that said, I will introduce my colleague, Ms. Lisa Kissinger. She is the academic administrator for social studies in grades 6 through 12. Hello. So I'm next to last, not last. But what I was thinking about as I was listening was how different all of these programs are. And there are a couple of reasons for those differences. One is that the state of New York has some pretty clear ideas about what students should do in order to earn a Regents diploma. In social studies, students are required to earn 4 credits in high school. So they will take a social studies course every year, grade 6 through 12. We have acceleration, which allows them to compact 2 years in one, so 7th and 8th grade will happen in 1 year. That puts them a grade level ahead of their peers, but they will still take social studies every year. We begin our honors program, as Mrs. Sherwin said, or I think Dr. Wood said, actually in grade 7. That's the first year that we offer an honors program in social studies. We, however, have I believe the first AP in the system, however, because we run AP World History as a 10th grade course. So that is an option for kids to be enrolled in a college level course in social studies as early as 10th grade. We offer AP American History, AP US History in 11th grade, and we also have a partnership with Syracuse University, and we run the Syracuse University Project Advance, or SUPA, electives, psychology, sociology for 12th graders, and also a course that meets the government requirement. A highlight of our social studies program in 11th grade is the interdisciplinary course American Studies, which, like the course Mrs. Sherwin talked about, is co-taught with an English and a social studies teacher. That doesn't have the art component quite as strongly. That is a pretty traditional American Studies offering. Check my notes. I think that's good. And at this point, if you have questions that you've written on index cards, we can collect those, and if not,
we pass them out.
yeah, we can pass them up, and then I'll introduce my colleague, Sarah Chaldy.
You want to wait a minute, or?
Yeah. Please raise your hand if you would like an index card. Yes, of course.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm Sarah Chaffee. I am the academic administrator for world languages in grades 7 through 12, and for English as a new language, grades K-12. And I'm very happy to be here tonight to talk to you about language opportunities for your children at Shen. So New York State has a 1-year minimum requirement. All students must study, 1 credit. All students must earn 1 credit in language study in order to graduate in New York State. And typically, Shen students do that by studying language in 7th and 8th grade, where they have 4 language options. We have Spanish, French, Latin, and German. They study those languages for 2 years in 7th and 8th grade, and then at the end of 8th grade, they take something called the Checkpoint A exam. And in world languages, we talk a lot in terms of checkpoints. So students will take and pass something called the Checkpoint A exam at the end of 8th grade, and passing that exam will earn them the 1 required credit they need to graduate in New York State. The vast majority of Shen students go on well beyond Checkpoint A, though, and they continue language study in grades 9 and 10, working toward Checkpoint B proficiency. So when students get to 9th grade, they continue the study of the same language, and so they'll study language in 9th and 10th grade. And at the end of 10th grade, they'll take something called the Checkpoint B exam. That's our closest equivalent to a Regents exam. It's not a Regents exam. We don't have a Regents exam in language anymore, but students have to pass that Checkpoint B exam in order to earn the number of credits that they need if they choose to use that sequence toward an advanced Regents diploma. It's one of the ways that students can earn an advanced Regents diploma. So we also have many students who continue on after Checkpoint B towards Checkpoint C proficiency, and they do that by taking SUNY level courses. And if I didn't mention too that when students get to 10th grade, they can also pick up a second language in French, German, Latin, or Spanish, and also Chinese. And those courses typically move at an accelerated pace, about the equivalent of 2 to 3 years of language study in one. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that in the high school, it's worth noting that there are many exchange and travel programs as well for students in French, German, Latin, and Spanish, which give our kids a really authentic, immersive experience in language and culture, too. And that's it. So I want to introduce Rose Vera, who is the academic administrator for technology, family and consumer sciences, and business.
Good evening. The courses that I am the academic administrator for are a little bit different than the core courses. These are electives. These are courses that the students can choose to take. And as such, our teachers do their best to make these very, very high interest and real world grounded. The technology and the business and family consumer science progressions help prepare our students for careers in engineering, entrepreneurship, early child education, and social work. There was a question on the electronic questions about fitting in electives into a child's schedule. Most students have a spot for at least one elective, sometimes more. And it really takes planning and having a good relationship with your child and your child's counselor when making the decisions onto which pathway and which sequence you want to take. It gets a little tricky in trying to fit language, music, and technology into your child's schedule. My son was an example where he loved the violin and didn't want to give the violin up for Latin, and also loved the technology. So of the three, it was Latin that went, and he never went on to checkpoint C, and that's okay because he had his music sequence and the technology sequence for the advanced diploma. But again, that's 5 units. It takes 5 units in business or technology or in the family consumer sciences to get that sequence for the advanced Regents diploma. The other thing that's nice about these programs is that many of them, the students, I keep saying children because I used to be elementary, I apologize, the students can take for college credit. There are college credit courses in the technology department. The Project Lead the Way sequences will earn the students credits at Rochester Institute of Technology, where there's also an AP computer science course that's offered. Many of our business courses have relationships with St. Rose and Hudson Valley Community College, and college credit can be earned there as well. And that is the same with the Family and Consumer Science sequence. There are 2 new courses that I want to highlight that hopefully will get board approved on Tuesday night. One is the Computer Science Discoveries course. It's a year-long course which gives the students an opportunity to dabble in 5 units in computers just to see if they like it. The other course that we're going to be running is a half-year course in mobile application development. This course is designed for students passed in 10th grade that have more of an interest in developing mobile applications. Right now we have students that are learning it the old-fashioned way, or as they say, their way, on YouTube. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. So I know that that's like a whirlwind tour, and I hope Mr. Roselli wasn't offended. He's our art and music academic administrator, and Mr. Cullinan, our physical education administrator. We did not include them this evening because we are far less likely to get questions about the pathways in those areas of physical education. You have to take it you take it every other day for your 4 years of high school. And music, most students start at a young age, and then they typically, once they get with a performing group, they stay with it all the way through, although there are a few exceptions, and art, there are choices in the program of studies. We actually have a fantastic high school art department that starts with a great art department all the way through. If you get an opportunity to visit one of the art shows that Shenandoah High School students do, I think you'd be amazed. I often wonder if I can borrow some of the pieces from my office because it would be a huge improvement over what I purchased at Pier 1. So let's see, where are we at with our questions? Do we have them sorted out so Mrs. Peverly gets 90% of them? Mrs. Peverly being our 612 math person. We've done this once or twice. Let's see.
You want a couple of the generic ones?
Oh, this is why we like it in the computer. Okay. No offense, folks, but explain. Okay, can you explain what Regents is? Is there a diploma that isn't Regents? I'm new to New York State. I think it might be a New York specific thing. That is such a great question. And the vast majority of us have always lived in New York State, so to us, like Regents is just like like a thing you grow up knowing. So a Regents exam, I'll give you my New York slant on it. It's a summative exam at the end of specific high school courses that for many years has made New York State say we have a great education program because we have these rigorous exams at the end of certain courses. And those courses are required in order for students to graduate from high school. It is different than other states. In fact, several of us were just touring a high school in Greenwich, Connecticut, and they moved to, you just have to meet a certain proficiency on the SAT, which we thought, we just like, wow, we can't even wrap our head around that. Like, it's so interesting in a way, but for us, we are really always thinking, we are always looking at how are our students doing on global history, and by every single group of students, we're looking at how our students are doing on global history, and then U.S. history, and then all of the sciences. There is a Regents exam for all four: earth science, chemistry, biology, and physics. We have Regents exams in all of them, and there are Regents exams in algebra, geometry, and then algebra 2. And then there's the 11th grade English Regents. And students, in order to get that advanced Regents diploma, need to pass those Regents exams. And we actually hope that they do better than pass them. We hope that they're getting in the 85 or above is the mastery rate. And colleges do. They know if you're coming from New York State, and they are looking at how students are scoring on those exams. And they pretty much know when there was a hard Regents year too. They kind of have an idea of how to scale it, because all of their New York State applicants who took chemistry last year would fall in a similar range, the top students. So it is a New York specific thing, and yes, students do need to pass Regents exams in order to, that is their exit criteria once they accumulate enough of it plus credits in other courses in order to graduate from high school. The other question here is, how long are the language exchange programs? It really depends. They're different. I know like the French one is maybe like 3 weeks or something. 2?
Yeah, but twice a year. Yeah.
Oh, they come here, students from France come here, and then our students go there. Not everybody participates, but many do, and it's a great experience. And it really depends on the language. We can't say for sure, because sometimes Spanish goes to one area and not another. Sometimes they're going to Latin American countries, like the Costa Rica trip, and so it does vary. But they are available in certain regions or in certain language courses. When is the point of change, and where you can change at the progression level? Is it only at the beginning of the semester, or the beginning of the year? Can you change in the middle of the semester? Okay, so can you move from an honors level course to accelerate in the middle of the year? Not really. The only time, let me talk in exceptions. If a teacher were to have a student in his or her math class, 8th grade, it's an 8th grade honors course, and the student is just like writing his or her own problems before the teacher can even think to write them on the paper. It does occasionally happen. Or like so far out in front, the teacher comes and is like, whoa, we've missed something here. This child belongs in, this child should be in Regents algebra right now. We do make those changes. But it is almost always precipitated by the school, by the teacher identifying the fact that this child is so ready to make an adjustment. 99-point-something% of students, that level change is, the decision for that level change is being made in the spring during course selection time, and then is implemented in the fall when the child comes back to school. And for math, it really is, as Mrs. Peverly said, it's only at those certain points. We do not allow students to skip over grade 6 math because it is just too foundational, and we find that we hurt students by doing that because they have these gaps in their understanding when they're moving on to much more challenging content. So we want to make sure that, and I say we don't. Again, the child who's writing algebra problems on his or her paper in grade 6, yes, we might have that conversation. But the vast majority, we want them taking grade 6 math.
I'm going to interrupt just for a second.
Yeah.
These cards speak to skipping in elementary too. I thought you might like to share some of the same sentiments.
Yes, okay. Is there a program for skipping a grade in 5th grade or 6th grade and going directly to 7th? Is it a program? No, there isn't a program to do that. What will typically happen, and we do, every year we have a very small handful of students that it happens with. The teacher will recognize when a child is ready for something very different. And all right, now you're getting the 10-year former elementary principal coming out of me. That is a heavy decision to make. To make that decision, you're basically saying you are going to parent your child for 1 less year under your roof before you send them off to college. You are saying that you are comfortable having all of their peer group be a year older when they're getting their license and prom and all the social factors that go along with that. That decision is really only made when it is absolutely the right decision academically, and we have conversations with you as mom and dad to make sure that you are in agreement that that's a good social decision as well. It's a very heavy decision, because what we would not want is that child to hit a wall at some point or feel very disconnected from their learning environment. Children have a long way to go, and the smoother that path can be, the more likely they are to stick with it and have a good experience in the long run. What is the best way to challenge first grade student in order not to wait for third grade? Okay, well, I'm assuming this question comes from somebody who's seen some of the first grade math work. It's challenging. Our first graders, second graders, our elementary math program is a rigorous program. Our top students are usually accounted for within that. Occasionally, teachers find that there are students who benefit from a little bit more. But what we don't want to do is encourage a rushing through of the foundational skills, because that comes back later to be a negative for the child. So we tend to take it slower in the first grade year, second grade year, and by third grade. It also gives us enough time to really get a handle on how that child is doing, because students grow at different rates. But by the time they're 8 in third grade, we've seen them for several years, and we have a good understanding that this is how this child presents, not just for this 4 or 6 month period of time, because children typically don't grow in an exact straight line progression. And I'm sure you've noticed this as mom and dad, like you turn and look and you're like, oh wait, wow, you're doing something I didn't recognize you doing before. And then they may level off for a bit and you say, gosh, when are they going to start doing this? Because you're anxious, and then all of a sudden it will happen. So it gives us more time to develop an understanding of how that child is going to do over time. Are there acceleration programs for first and second grade? The other point I want to make about this is reading and writing is naturally differentiated. Students, we never say, ooh, write less complex sentences, use less great vocabulary words, right? Because students will always write to their level. So there is no need to accelerate a child simply to press them forward in writing or reading even, because we're giving them books to read that are already at their level. So those areas, we just naturally differentiate. Our elementary teachers are excellent at doing that, and they just naturally lend to us teaching children at the level they're at, within the grade level they're at.
I have a few more general questions for you for the secondary level.
Okay. Okay, is it possible to apply honors courses if a student is in Regents course level? So I'm not exactly sure what this question is asking, but if a child is in a Regents course, they're going to get the Regents credit. They're not going to get an honors credit for that course. If the question is asking if they're in a Regents level, can they request to take an honors course the following year? The answer is yes. That is one. Now, their teachers typically make a recommendation, and if the teacher recommends that your child stay in a Regents level, you have to be really confident that your child's going to be successful, but we're not going to tell you no. We'll say, okay, if you and your child think you can take an honors level course, we will try to support that decision. We just really hope that it's a right fit. Otherwise, it will be an extremely long year for you and for your child. What is the difference between honors and accelerated programs? Honors, it's typically the same content as what is being learned in the Regents level, but it is in more depth. It is higher level discussion. The topic is extended. It's just deeper study. Acceleration is typically that they are studying the next year's content. And the criteria to get into honors and accelerated programming, it varies by the point at which you accelerate. So I'll give, for example, if you were to be interested in your child entering the accelerated English social studies program in the middle school. We have a very complex set of data that we look at for every child, and we use what we consider to be a very objective and fair decision. So it is not how many letters or how great the appeal is from mom or the child. It is very objective based on actual student performance data over the course of time, and not just one number. We look at a lot of numbers, and we look at children hitting the benchmark in, I'll say like 6 out of 8 of the numbers. We give them a few freebies because none of us is perfect in every single thing. But we look for multiple reasons why we have data to support moving children forward. So that's just the social studies and English. But in other areas like math, we'll look at the TOGA or the TOMEG testing. If students take, this is way more than you need to walk away with tonight. This is our responsibility to know all this and then communicate it to you when the time comes. But at certain points, we'll send home a letter, are you interested in having your child take a COGAT test in grades 3 or 4 or 5? And if you say yes to that, and your child does exceptionally well in the mathematical strand of that COGAT test, we may come back to you and say, we would like to do another test on your child, which is a TOMEG test. It's like a test of mathematical giftedness. And the students who score well on that are the ones we then say to you, we are recommending that your child accelerate in math. So we do a very careful screening to make sure that we have students who are going to be successful moving forward.
So if so we're just projecting this page again, and if you see under academic programs what is highlighted yellow there, enrichment acceleration, there are multiple files and a narrated PowerPoint, all kinds of resources there to go into the detail that Dr. Wood just explained to you. So there's lots more information on the website.
Yeah, that's a great point. The next question is, what's the major difference between college level course and AP? AP courses, advanced placement courses, are put out by the College Board and they are designed to be college level courses. However, some colleges offer college credit for that, others don't. What Sarah Chaffee was referring to when she said the SUNY courses, we offer SUNY Spanish 1. So a junior level student who's taken Spanish since 7th grade may, as a junior, go into their first year of a college course at a SUNY level 1, and then as a senior take SUNY level 2. And yes, there is, if you want that college credit, you will need to pay the college a small amount of money. It's much smaller than what you pay. It won't feel small. I just wrote a $775 check myself as mom to a college. I didn't love paying that, but I also had to give myself the talk through of this is a lot cheaper than it will be when he actually gets to college, so I will try to pay for the credit now. Realizing that not all colleges will accept the credit. The good thing about a SUNY credit is that for the most part it's transferable within the state university system. If a child happens to get into Amherst, Amherst may not accept that SUNY credit. So it's hard when you're a parent of a junior or senior and you're saying, do I pay for that college credit right now or do I not? The answer is it's hard to know, because it's hard to know if your child is going to a college that will say yes. It never hurts, but, and we have also experienced parents here who found that their child has gone back and negotiated, say when they're a junior in college, you know, you didn't take my credit when I was a freshman, will you consider now so I can be on track to graduate early, or take another upper level course as a waiver? And so sometimes there are ways around that. Okay, I bet Mrs. Peverly has a big list of questions over there. Do you want to come over?
Yes, I'm just,
It's not hundreds.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Okay. So there are quite a few questions about specifically grade 6 honors and acceleration, and I think that was just talked about a little bit. So again, multiple data points are looked at when when we look at students for honors and accelerated programming. So again, whether it's TOMEGs, COGATs, how they do on common assessments, how they do on New York State assessments. Sometimes teachers are asked for some input. All right, so there's lots of things that we take a look at before a final decision is made. It's not just one test and a student is either in or out. Let's see, COGAT, about that. When's the best time to discuss about our daughter's acceleration in math and science? She's in grade 6. Again, any time is a good time. So if there's something that, again, if you have a goal, if your child has a goal, if you're thinking that your child needs something different, start the conversation now. Talk to the teacher. What are they seeing? What kinds of work habits? What kinds of, are they picking up concepts and skills quickly? But start the conversation now so that there's no surprises and there's no disappointment at the end of the year.
So the best math progression for a student, not strong in math, but wants to be below 4 years old.
Okay, so again, so when you look at all the different ways that students can progress in math, so when you're looking at a four-year college, generally speaking, and again, generally, students will take algebra in 1 year, geometry, algebra 2, and usually pre-calculus before they leave us to go on to a four-year college. And again, that's generally speaking.
Yep.
Let's
Can
see.
they take, oh, that's not yours, sorry.
Okay,
Here,
so
can they get 2 credits for algebra?
yeah,
1?
so students who take the algebra over the 2 years, and again, those are students who just need a lot more time to be successful in that course. They actually do get 2 credits of math. So they get a credit for Math 1A and they get a credit for Math 1B. Keep in mind they need 3 credits of math minimally to graduate. And again, we have programming for those students as well to take a full 4 years of math.
I'll take the next one.
Okay.
So the next question is there a way for a child to take both art and chorus in high school? And the answer is yes. Typically, students have room for 2 additional subject areas. It does depend on your child's specific circumstances. So in most cases, yes. Another is, can you explain the difference in curriculum between honors math at the 6th grade level and regular math? The nightly homework seems comparable, so it's hard to understand how they're different. And I would just say that I know in our conversations that the curriculum map, if you were to examine the curriculum map for that grade 6 honors course and the work that the teachers do in developing the course, that those topics are taught in greater depth. And I'm actually kind of pleased to hear that they're not having a tremendously different amount of homework, because the idea that honors and acceleration is just more, it isn't accurate. It really should be replacement. It should be in more depth occasionally, but it shouldn't always result in a lot more. If your child is on an accelerated path and having difficulty, is it easy to transition to another path such as honors?
Okay, so, yeah, so every once in a while we do have a student who, let's say, is accelerated and for whatever reason they're just not being successful, whatever that means. So again, I would say reach out to your child's teacher. What are they seeing? Again, we do not want students being upset and anxious about class. We want them to be excited about it. So if a change is needed, we will make the change. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not, depending on how the schedule looks for that student. But we're not going to keep a student in a situation that is not good for them and that is not helping them grow in math.
Another question is, if a student is in an honors math or accelerated ELA program, is the student eligible for a Regents program? Absolutely. So the Regents program is the base level program. If your child is in honors or acceleration, it actually means that they're working beyond that level. So it's kind of all encompassing. So if your child is passing the upper level, they were fine. They will have accumulated what they need to graduate.
There's a tech question.
Yeah, there was a question about aerospace and why isn't it recommended for 10th graders? And it's simply because that's a fairly new course and it fills up quickly. So they try to steer 10th graders into courses that they'll get into so that they aren't disenrolled and have to find another course. So that's the reason. Along that line, I had a question about the difference between DDE and DDP. Both courses are offered at the 9th grade level for art credit. The digital design for engineering is a college level course, so you will get that RIT credit. The design for digital production is more for the career path, but they both qualify for art credit.
We will keep continue answering questions, but we always leave after tonight. We've done this for many years, and we think, did we really address their questions? Like, what did parents come expecting based on how we advertised the program, and have we done our job well? And we are okay with honest feedback, so if you could just take a minute at some point and get into that survey and tell us what you came hoping for, and if we accomplish that, and we welcome any sort of constructive feedback you may have as well.
So I just had one question, and that was, is there a good time to move from accelerated social studies to honors social studies without repeating information in course content? So that's a great question. And the answer to it is because in middle school, accelerated social studies, the first year is 7th and 8th grade in 1 year.
I would say that students learn, and the curriculum for 7th and 8th grade social studies is U.S. history from the beginning to the present. So there's going to be some repetition if the child moves from 7-8 acceleration to 8 honors. Because the U.S. history, you know, the events that happened, or what happened, how they investigate it, how they report on it, how they describe what they've learned, the amount of primary sources they read, the instruction of the course is different. So there may be, for example, you may learn about World War I, but what you're going to do with what you've learned about World War I will be very different if you move out of acceleration into the 8 honors program. And we would strongly recommend, if that's something that's being considered, you want to do that in 7th grade or the very beginning of 8th grade, because once you have taken Global 9 as an 8th grader, you have earned 1 high school credit. And you can't earn 2 credits for the same course, so you would not repeat Global 9. So you want to make that decision to move out of the program while you are still in that 7th grade year.
So I just also have one question. It's a great question. Do you offer AP Chinese? And if not, how can a student take the AP Chinese exam? So at this time, we do not offer AP Chinese. We offer Chinese 1 and Chinese 2. And those courses, Chinese 1 is for students who are already studying their first language, their second language, the language that they began studying in middle school. They should be studying that at the checkpoint B level before they can pick up Chinese. So we offer Chinese 1 and Chinese 2, and students who want to challenge an AP exam, they can do that just like they can do with any AP exam, and the best person to speak to at that point is your child's counselor. They can talk to you about the process of challenging an AP exam.
So you know it is time to wrap up when the most eager audience member who came and sat in the front center has nodded off very peacefully here. So it is officially time for us to call it. Right, it's definitely a sign that we've spoken too long. We are here and happy to answer any questions within the next, say, 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll all call it a night, because I would not be beyond doing what this young lady is doing as well. So thank you very much for coming. We're so happy to have had you here this evening, and we look forward to serving your children in the years to come.